Okay, hi everybody. We are now going to do the area of a shape. Okay, so we already talked about how area refers to the space inside a shape, and I'm going to go through a few examples with you so that you can calculate the area of some basic shapes. Okay, I would leave circles and I will do circles in the next video to try and help you with that, but hopefully this will make it slightly clearer. Okay, so we're going to start off with example 1, and I've asked you to calculate the area of this shape. Now this shape here, although it may not fit, this is meant to be a square. Now how can we tell that it's going to be a square? Well, we can tell because it's got these lines on it, and these lines mean that each of these sides is the same length. Okay, so that means that that is 6 centimetres as well. Okay, now you will recall in our learnt the area of a rectangle is length times. Okay, now here, obviously, this is not a rectangle, but a square is a type of rectangle. It's just a type of rectangle where the length and the width happen to be the same length. Okay, so the area of a rectangle is length times width. This can be our length if you like, this can be our width, and so the area is 6 times 6, which is 36. Now area is measured in centimetres squared. If it was in metres, it would be measured in metres squared. Okay, that is saying how many squares, how many squares we can fit inside the shape, which refers to the area. Okay, and we can fit 36 centimetre squares in this shape. That's what it means. Okay, let's go on to example 2. Example 2, oh, here is a rectangle, okay, not drawn to scale. None of these are ever going to be drawn to scale. And so to calculate the area, you do length times width, 8 times 3. Obviously, it does not matter what order you're putting these in, because when we multiply things, 8 times 3 is the same as 3 times 8, okay? So it doesn't matter what order you're putting it in. 8 times 3 is 24 centimetres squared. Okay, now just to be clear, it does not matter which way up the rectangle is. And so here, when I've got a rectangle that's sort of a bit more upright, if you like, the area is exactly the same. It is 9 times 11, or 11 times 9, which is 99. Now this is in metres, so the answer, the unit, is in metres squared. That means we could get 99 square metres, so a metre by a metre squared, within this rectangle. That is what that means. Okay, right, we're going to go on to triangles now. Now I haven't prepared some triangle examples, so we should do triangles together. Okay, now I want you to think about a rectangle. Here is a rectangle. If I cut a rectangle in half, like you would a sandwich, if you think about a sandwich, you can make it into, you can cut it in half, you can cut it diagonally in half. What I have made is 2 triangles. Okay, now to find the area of the rectangle, we did length times width, or width times length, however you want to call it. Okay, so here we are going to find the area of the triangle, just triangle A. We are going to do this times this, and then we don't want all of that because we don't want this bit here. We want to get rid of that bit. Now that is half of the rectangle, so we can cover that half up, and we are left with half the rectangle, which is the triangle. Okay, so that means that the area of a triangle is the base times by the height, and then you have to divide it by 2. Okay, now I'm using that line to mean divide because that will make it easier for us to write it. You have to do the base times the height first and then divide it by 2. Okay, you can't divide the base by 2 and the height by 2 because otherwise you'd be ending up dividing by 4. Okay, so let's do a little example. Now it's very important that when we are doing this, we are thinking about how the triangle would make a rectangle. So if it's a right angle triangle, which we will do here, let's do it the other way up to keep it a bit more exciting. If it is a right angle triangle, we can see that that is easily half a rectangle because we could draw in the other half of the rectangle to make it a rectangle. Okay, so it's quite obvious, hopefully. So let's say this is our triangle. So to find its area, we're going to do base. Now this is the base, even though it's on the top, this is the base and this is the height, because this is what it is sitting on. That would be 8 centimetres and that would be 4 centimetres, okay? That is that rotated. I've rotated it 180 degrees, okay? So we're doing the base. You don't have to write this out every time, I'm just writing it to show you, divided by 2. Base times height divided by 2. So the base is 8 times by 4 divided by 2. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 divided by 2 is 16. Now, again, because it's area, I don't know what's happened to my computer screen there. Hope you can all see it still. Because it is area, it is going to be measured in centimetres squared. So the answer is 16 centimetres squared. Okay, please don't write. Now, this is very fussy of me, but I don't want you to write. I want you to write it out exactly as I have written it, okay? I would not like you to write 8 times 4 equals 32 divided by 2 equals 16, because that doesn't make sense if you write it in a continued line, okay? If you want to write it differently to how I've written it, although I'd like you to write it like this, if you want to write it differently, you could do 8 times 4 is 32, 32 divided by 2 is 16, and do it down the page like that rather than in one big line. Okay, now if we have a second example, for example, if we had a triangle like this, it doesn't matter if it's an isosceles triangle or a scalene triangle, it does not matter, as long as it is some sort of triangle. Let's do this one in meters as we did the last one in centimeters. Okay, here is my triangle. Now, in order to do this, in order to find the area, you have to do the base times the height. Now the height, when we are talking about the height, we are talking about the vertical height, okay? So the height that is at right angle to the ground, okay? So here's the ground, this is the height, this upwards bit here. It is not a slanty height, so this is not the height of a triangle. It has to be this is the height of the triangle. Okay, so it's the vertical height we are talking about. Okay, so area is the same thing, base, which is 5, times by the height, divided by 2. 5 times 10 is 50, 50 divided by 2 is 25 meters, so it is measured in meters squared. Okay, now the sorts of questions you might get, okay, don't forget, whenever you're doing questions, you have to show all your work. Okay, now another example you might get is something like, let's make sure I get one that works. Okay, here is another example. Now, this triangle is an isosceles triangle. Now, similar to a square, because they've got both of these lines on, that means that these two lines are the same length. So if I hadn't have written 5 centimeters here, that would be 5 centimeters. Okay, now that is useful if you need to work out the perimeter, because the perimeter would be this plus this. I mean, we haven't been asked to do it, but let's do it anyway. The perimeter would be 8 plus 5 plus 5. It's the distance around the outside of the shape. Okay, and if you weren't told that that shape was 5, that length, sorry, was 5, you would know it was, because that line and that line mean that that line is the same. Okay, so perimeter would be 18 centimeters. Now the area, we know, is the base times the vertical height. I'm going to change my thing to vertical height, divided by 2. So my base is 8, okay? My vertical height is not 5, because that is at a slant, that is at an angle, okay? Whereas the height, the vertical height I need is right angles to the ground. Here's the ground, it's at a right angle, it's at 90 degrees to the ground, so it has to be the 3, 8 times 3 divided by 2. Now 8 times 3 is 24, 24 divided by 2 makes 12, and so my answer is 12 centimeters squared, okay? Harder to see than a rectangle, but that is how you do a triangle. Now be careful if you had a triangle that is like